knows this person? Are how you doing, with this problem or with that problem? It's those type of congenial conversations. And you only do that by getting officers out and about and talking. Now, it's easier in some parts of town than it is in other parts of town. And we've really concentrated in this hill, downtown corridor, university, kind of the creek path area, because when you get into South Boulder or North Boulder or East Boulder, out in Gun Barrel where it's more residential, it's not really effective for officers to get out and just walk blocks. And the areas are so, the expanse is there, and so they need to be in a car so they can cover grounds. But those are important factors, and those are community policing philosophies to try and do that, to get those interactions going.
Would you be open to meeting with community members in an open forum?
Sure. We have, I gave you many examples of forums that we have been, and absolutely.
Yes, I was just wondering if I might be able to make some comments in response to public comment before Chief Testa leaves around homelessness.
Okay.
Just to provide some additional information, so whenever that works on your agenda.
Okay.
Chief, just a couple of follow-up comments, if I may, and one question. And so for me, I'm really less interested in the conversation around training, because I don't think that's where, for me personally, my humble opinion, where behavior change really happened. Maybe a little bit, but not quite with the weight and the effectiveness as a chief's leadership. And in sort of a paramilitary kind of structure, the chief's leadership is everything. And you speak really eloquently about your philosophy and practice and expectations around community policing. And my hope is that it weaves through the entire department, to the police officers union, to all facets, that community policing is important to the chief, not because the HRC thinks so or other members of the community think so, but because it's a best practice. And it's not even a new concept. Community policing, as you know, has been around for a long time. And I've seen, again in my professional life, how effective it was in East Palo Alto, how effective it was in Oakland. And to the extent that people do what's funded and what's measured, I just think rather than the focus so much, although, I think there's a place for training, that it's less about that and it's more about what it is that the chief's gonna measure. And so that's a segue to my question. This data set that you have from 2012 to 2014, was this a special data run, or do you get this data monthly? I just think if I were chief, I would want that data monthly, and I would want my command staff by division or by beat or however you do that to have it monthly. And so you have a pulse, and your command staff and the union, everyone has a pulse on what's going on. And whether it's broken down by adult and juvenile, so you mentioned this disposition, nothing's done, custody, full booking and release. By ethnicity, each of those categories, to the extent that your data person can do that. I just think, it's all about transparency. I would put it on the website and I'd say, here it is. I'm standing before you naked. And this is it. There's nothing more to say. Nobody has anything to hide.
Right, so your point is well made in terms of how do I get my philosophy, my principles down to the employee who's actually on the street making those decisions. And you can't police a community from an office. And so since I've been chief, which has been about a year now, I ride with officers. I've ridden on a night shift many times throughout the year. I'm out walking. I've walked creek paths, I've walked all around with officers, I've ridden during day hours, and I attend briefings. Now, I can't do that every day because I have an extremely busy schedule, but the point is that I'm there, and it's not a surprise when they see me there because it happens routinely or regularly. And those conversations occur for me, but more so than that, you're right. You know, a law enforcement agency, like a fire department, is somewhat of a paramilitary organization, right? And so you have to make sure that the command officers, that the supervisors are in line with me and my vision. And those occur in meetings where we talk about that all the time. It occurs in many different aspects. There's metrics throughout the organization, and it occurs when deputy chiefs and commanders go to briefings, so it's not just a sergeant in there, but that happens in our organization every week. I know of law enforcement agencies, they would say, haven't seen a commander, haven't seen a deputy chief or a chief in briefing in a year or so. But not in our organization. We're there. We're there because we want them to know we care about them. And I do. I care about our employees. They're my work family. And I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the work that they do. And that they want to come out here and do an extremely difficult job. Policing right now, this is the most, I've been doing this job for 31 years, and this is the most divisive I have ever seen it in our country. And we have to, as a country, we have to acknowledge things, and we have to continue to dialogue and move forward and make change. And now more than ever, we need people to be interested in policing as a profession. And we need good people to be involved in that.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you and your officers again for being out here tonight and for your work. I mean, I'm not taking down an armed robber. That's just not going to I'm not running into a burning building. None of that's happening. And I'm a mom of 2 young kids. My husband travels a lot. I feel vulnerable. And so I know in the back of my head that there are a lot more fine officers than not. And I think that's important. And I think that's part of the healing in the wake of healing you talked about healing on multiple grounds. And I think it's also important for the officers to hear that from the community.
Thank you. You know, when I was in that forum in Denver at the Potter's House, and I mentioned that there were over 700 in the congregation, we got a standing ovation from them when we were done, because there's a lot of people there that were hurting, a lot of people dealing with issues that they haven't had closure on for years, you know, whatever that may be. But there was and the pastor really, he's the guy who did it. I mean, he's the one who facilitated that and made it happen. But there was a connection that was made there. So it can happen, you know. We can heal as a community, as a country, and we can move forward.
So there's a number of sort of conflict resolution-oriented statements in my mind, which all start with how can we, very much joining language, and I think a couple of them are on my mind, such as how can we assure people of Boulder a lot of transparency, get their questions answered? How can we increase trust among those who spoke tonight, other people who have spoken other nights, other people out in the community? And I kind of guess for every one person who speaks on a microphone in this room to any kind of board or commissioner, city council, there's probably 50 people, the other people who wouldn't come. And maybe those are the two. So transparency and trust for me, I think, are probably paramount. And I think people want a probably some more information that you all have that you could share as well that, that people just need to hear and have that conversation. And thank you so much for coming, because it demonstrates that you're willing to do that, and also that you're willing to look at options. And the purpose of this board is really to work on human relations, which is all of us here in this room. So we are engaged. Thank you for being engaged. Thank you for being engaged, and everyone who came tonight. A couple past commission members in our audience as well. With that, we have kept you a while, and we appreciate that. Any final comments, thoughts? Karen?
I just wanted to make some comments that are related to, and somewhat related to enforcement for, Chief Leeds. I just wanted to let the folks in the audience and the commissioners know that there will be an information packet going to council on April 21st with an update on homeless issues. This is from the social welfare side, not from the enforcement side. But the point of the update is to let council know a lot of the current efforts underway. And I know Mr. Smoke spoke specifically to housing. The city's orientation toward assisting in reducing homelessness is really focused on permanent housing, permanent supportive housing, moving people off the streets into permanent housing with supportive services. And that's kind of the area that we have really been focused on. So I just wanted to let you know of a couple of things that are underway. We are a participant, actually part of the coordination committee for a project called 25 Cities. And this is, we are working with the 7-county Metro Denver region on finding permanent housing for our resident population, because we know housing in Boulder County is a very significant issue. We have Section 8 vouchers that go unused. We have people with resources and funding that cannot find housing in Boulder County, largely because vacancy rates are very, very low, rents are very high, landlords can be picky about who they rent units to. So we are working with the Metro Denver region, the 7 Denver Metro region, part of a pilot project called 25 Cities to find permanent housing, to have a master list and to find permanent housing across the entire region where it's needed. We are also working with our regional partners in the 7 Denver metro area to develop a landlord-tenant advocacy program for homeless individuals, to really work with landlords to encourage them and support them in renting units to homeless individuals, low-income individuals, and get the support that they need to not evict tenants. Or we've also been to the consortium of cities, which is Boulder County cities, and had a couple of conversations now about the housing crisis in Boulder County, and that Longmont, the city of Boulder, and Boulder County themselves are really the only municipal entities and government entities supporting permanent supportive housing or housing of any sort. So the consortium of cities has agreed to open up the dialogue with all of the members of the consortium, and we will be submitting a proposal to them in April to fund a housing study across the county that all the entities would fund. Greg mentioned the EDGE program. We're also trying to assist municipal court, and through the municipal court, the police department, on reducing reducing the numbers of the most very high needs people who end up in municipal court. Those homeless individuals who have a very high number of citations, and how we can prioritize them first into permanent housing and services. One of the issues is that our first responders are those people on the street who are charged with enforcement, in this case our police department, but also basically on the street being social workers. I mean, and that's what we're asking, this very broad range of skill, and what we really need are people who can very, very quickly leave the streets into permanent housing and services that they need. So that's just a little bit of the information that will be in the IP that will be going to council on April 21st.
Also finding out something, Chief Testa is still here and other police representatives in the audience. I just really want to emphasize to everybody, to the HRC and to the community, that Boulder Police Department has worked with the community and the Human Relations Commission in the past and currently to make recommendations to council regarding community safety. A few examples I'll give you is the sentence enhancement ordinance that was brought up before. That came out when biased incidents were occurring in the community. The police department worked with us through a group we formed called Community United Against Hate to bring forth recommendations to council, and thus was the birth of the sentence enhancement ordinance, and one that I think the commission should also really pride itself on, as it is a model for the entire metro area, is failure to pay wages ordinance. There's a wage theft task force that is formed throughout the metropolitan area, and they are always amazed with Boulder's failure to pay wages ordinance and the relationship that we've been able to develop with the police department, because it only works in the enforcement against wage theft to have all the different bodies fully engaged and involved. The unique step that Boulder has is once our office has investigated a case and we've tried to obtain the wages owed, the next step is to submit it to prosecution. And prosecution can only move forward in the municipal court with an action to try to obtain wages owed if we have the police department that is willing to go to the respective employer and serve a summons on the employer. And that's a huge step in order to progress to obtaining the wages owed, and police department has been extremely cooperative with that. So I just wanted to tell you that there is other aspects of the work of the police department that are strong in that regard. And just one other real quick one is the Immigrant Advisory Committee that is advisory to city manager. Over the past 2-3 years, I get calls from Police Chief Testa about when can I come to a meeting, can I talk to the immigrant committee about how we can increase that trust. So just wanted to point those out.
Thank you. Well, with that, you're free to go. Thank you so much.
Good.
Thank you so much. And your presentation tonight